Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Tuesday, Yom Shlishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Stephen in New Hampshire, Melissa in Great Neck, Karen in Northern California, Bella in Florida, Shandor in the Bronx, Bill in mid-Missouri, John in Maine, Paula in the Great Northwest, Joe in the Inland Empire, Guy in Ohio, Renee in Indiana, Belle in Texas, Spencer in Connecticut, Chaim in Florida, Aoife in Florida, Elle in Southern California, Alan in New York City, Frank in San Pedro, Sharon in New Jersey, Spencer in Connecticut. Welcome, everybody. Another colorful and fascinating page. You may have seen, just a little bit of news, that there's a screening. If you're, I mentioned it right already, didn't I? Screening at Harvard on Monday night at Harvard. There's a post about it on our Facebook page. Would love to see you there if you're in the Boston area. You do have to RSVP and get your name on the list. Should be interesting to be back at Harvard and see what's going on over there for the Jewish community. But we're very excited to be sharing our movie Guns and Moses special sneak preview Monday night. So, you might have guessed, I'll be traveling on Sunday. I'll be at the screening on Monday. But I'm traveling back early Tuesday morning, so we should only have to miss Sunday and Monday. And then we'll be back up on Tuesday, okay? And I just don't want to, push it here in Sanhedrin. So we're well aware we're a little bit behind, running a couple weeks behind the Daf Yomi schedule, and that's okay. Very, very common for Daf Yomi classes to be there. However, when we get to the next track date, Makos, there, first of all, there are some shorter pages, but also I think for a time, what I'll probably do is start doing something like 3 a day, right? And in order to do that, I'm not going to rush it like crazy. I'll prepare, I'll read the pages, and then, as I've done in the past, although not in the last couple of years, but as we used to do, I'll just, summarize certain sections and then move to the next place of interest. So I'm not sure what people are doing in terms of, since we do the whole page, maybe you're just reading the page with me and that's what you do. And that's great. But, once we start sort of getting into catch-up mode, maybe you'll want to notate as we go through what it is that I summarized so that later, you would go back and actually read those sections. And so, God willing, when we come to the end of our journey in 2027, you read everything, right? You've been through everything. We do still owe a tractate, right? Tractate, I think, is Nadarim, which happened when we were in production and I just couldn't teach at all for 3 months. So I'm still thinking about that. Kind of where my head is at is either I'm going to have my son teach it, who would do a wonderful job, or possibly, because when the next cycle starts, my plan, as I've mentioned before, is to move from the Talmud to the Bible. I plan to teach Tanakh, and not on anybody else's schedule. So if there's a day where there's so much to talk about that we only do a few verses, that's what we're going to do. Probably the most I'll do in a day is a chapter. So it's going to be great. I'm so excited because the Bible is just so accessible to everybody. The Talmud is often so difficult. But everybody appreciates the Bible, and because of you, my holy sisters and brothers, and we've been through the whole Gemara together. By that point, God willing, we will have been through the whole Gemara together. We just have so much to say and to add to any discussion about the Bible, right? And so I have no idea how long the journey through the Bible will take. Probably more than 7 years, maybe a lot more. I don't know. But we're going to have some amount of Bible every day. That's what AT Daily is going to become. But I want to finish this cycle, right? So either as we're coming to the end, like in 2027, or maybe right after the actual official Siyum, and I start teaching Tanakh, maybe I'll teach, the portion of Bible each day, and then, end the feed, and then start again, and just do that makeup tractate. Something. Well, we'll figure out the strategy, but I do want that, our journey through Daf Yomi is complete and not lacking one of the tractates, as I was forced to do when we were in production on the movie. But other than that, missing tractate, when I'm forced to travel, etc., normally we like to just make it up with double pages when there are short pages. But since we're 2 weeks behind, we'll have to take a little bit more of an aggressive measure. But we're all going to do it. We're going to make it. We're going to read all the pages, and we will have a complete journey through Daf Yomi. So that's where my thinking is. Okay. Today's daf is page 93. We got a bit of a head start on it yesterday. So we are at 93a, a little bit past the halfway point. And we are continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1 here in chapter 11 of Tractate Sanhedrin, the 24th volume of the Talmud. Here we've been talking about the afterlife. Then who has a portion in it, and how do we know that there is an afterlife, that there is an Olam Haba, a world to come in the Torah? We spent a lot of time, but the various sages showing where there are allusions, even though it's not explicit, in the Torah or in the rest of Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. Okay, so here we're continuing that discussion, not so much deriving about Olam Haba, but what we were talking about yesterday is some of these righteous people, especially when we were talking about Daniel and the 3 righteous Jews who went into the oven, or were thrown into the oven basically by Nebuchadnezzar, but came out unscathed. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So this discussion continues. This was initially brought in because there was an allusion to the world to come there, but now there's some very colorful passages about that incident. So apropos, the deliverance of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the book of Daniel, the Gemara cites the verses from Jeremiah 29:11. So says the Lord of hosts and the God of Israel. So says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning Ahab, the son of Kaliah, and of Tzidkiah, the son of Maaseiah, who prophesied to you a lie in my name. Right? So a case of false prophecy, which we saw in the last chapter, is a death penalty offense. Behold, I will deliver them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia, and he shall slay them before your eyes. And it is written, Jeremiah 29:22, and of them shall be taken a curse by all the captivity of Judea who are in Babylonia, in Bavel, saying, may the Lord make you like Zedekiah and like Ahab, whom the king of Bavel toasted in the fire. Says the Gemara, it is not stated whom the king of Bavel burned, but rather whom the king of Bavel toasted. And Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, this teaches that he rendered them like toasted wheat, which is toasted on all sides. And the verse states, because they have committed baseness in Israel and have committed adultery with the wives of their neighbors. Jeremiah 29:23. What did they do? So the Gemara relates, they went to the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Ahab said to her, so says the Lord, submit to Tzidkiah and engage in intercourse with him. And Tzidkiah said to her, so says the Lord, submit to Ahab and engage in intercourse with him. So she went and said to her father what they said to her. Nebuchadnezzar said to his daughter, the God of these people abhors lewdness. So this is likely a false prophecy. When they come to you, send them to me. When they came to her, she sent them to her father. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, who told you to do this? They said, it was the Holy One, blessed be he. Nebuchadnezzar said, but haven't I asked Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about this? And they said to me, it is prohibited. They said to him, well, we too are prophets like they are. God did not say this prophecy to them. He said it to us. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, if so, I wish to put you to the test to determine if you are righteous, just as I put Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah to the test. Ahab and Sidkiah said to Nebuchadnezzar, they were 3, and we are only 2, and our merit is not great enough to save us from the fire. Okay, says Nebuchadnezzar, choose for yourselves a 3rd person, whomever you wish, to be put to the test with you. They said to him, we choose Joshua the high priest. And they chose him because they thought, let Joshua the high priest come with us, since his merit is great and it will protect us. They took the 3 of them down and cast them into the furnace, and they were burned. And as for Joshua the high priest, his garments were singed, as it is stated, and he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and the Satan was standing at his right to thwart him. Zechariah 3:1. And it is written, and the Lord said to the Satan, the Lord shall rebuke you, Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem shall rebuke you. Is this man not a firebrand plucked from the fire? Right, so we're reading a midrash here. It's not, this whole story is not stated in the Bible, but it has come down to us based on certain verses in the Bible. And this is one, that Joshua the high priest is a firebrand plucked from the fire, right? So he was placed in with these wicked kings. They perished. He was spared, but he was singed. Nebuchadnezzar said to Joshua the high priest, I know you are righteous because you were delivered from the fire. But what is the reason that the fire was slightly effective concerning you? And for Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, the fire was not effective. The fire was not effective at all concerning them, and their garments were not even singed. So Joshua the high priest said to him, they were 3 righteous people, and I am 1. Nebuchadnezzar said to him, but wasn't Abraham 1 person? And when he was cast into the furnace of the fire, it had no effect. And Joshua answered him, there in the case of Abraham, there was no wicked people with him. There were no wicked people with him. And license to cause damage was not given to the fire. Here in this case, there were wicked people with me, and license to cause damage was given to the fire. And the Gemara adds that this explains the adage that people say, if there are 2 dry firebrands and 1 moist one in a fire, the dry firebrands burn the moist one. You know, I've heard it taught before, it's not mentioned here, but I've heard it taught before that, you know, once there's a certain amount of wickedness in the world, right? And God sends, you know, justice, the tough attribute of justice into the world, then, you know, even the innocent can get caught up in that conflagration. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that Joshua the high priest was punished and was cast into the furnace? And Rav Papa says it was due to the fact that his sons would marry women who were not fit for marriage into the priesthood, and he did not reprimand them. As it is stated, and Joshua was clothed in filthy garments, and he stood before the angel, right? This is in the vision of Zechariah the prophet, at Zechariah 3:3. And was it the typical manner of Joshua to wear filthy garments? Rather, this verse teaches an allusion that his sons would marry women who were not fit for marriage into the priesthood, and he did not reprimand them. And that is why he appeared with soiled garments in the vision of the prophet Zechariah. So Joshua was not, as holy as he was also human, and he had some demerits with him, right? Apropos Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, the Gemara cites that which Rabbi Tanchum says that Bar Kochba taught in Sippori. What is the meaning of that which is written with regard to the statement of Ruth to Naomi concerning Boaz in Ruth 3:17? These 6 grains of barley he gave to me. Now, what is the meaning of this phrase, 6 grains of barley? If we say that the reference is to 6 actual grains of barley, is it the manner of Boaz to give a minimal gift like this? 6 grains of barley. Boaz was very wealthy, right? That's why when Ruth returned, when Naomi returned and sent Ruth to glean in that field, and eventually Boaz had compassion for Ruth and ended up marrying her. And this was, these were ancestors of King David. But it was would the Bible even take note that he gave her a gift of 6 grains? Obviously, this is a metaphoric description. What is it? Says the Gemara. Rather, he gave her 6 sa of grain, a tremendous amount of grain, large volumes of grain. Now we're in 93b. So the Gemara asks, and is it the typical manner of a woman to take a heavy burden of 6 sa of barley? How could she even carry that? So rather, Boaz was alluding to something different. He was alluding to the fact that to Ruth, there were 6 descendants destined to emerge from her, who would each be blessed with 6 blessings. And these are they: David, right? King David, and the Messiah, because the Moshiach, when Moshiach comes, he will be a descendant of King David, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So the Gemara elaborates, David was blessed with 6 virtues, as it is written, and one of the servants answered and said, Behold, I have seen a son of Yishai in English is Jesse, of the house of Bethlehem, who knows to play, and is a fine warrior, and a man of war, and prudent in speech, and a comely man, and the Lord is with him. That's 1 Samuel 16:18. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Doeg the Edomite, one of Saul's servants, stated this entire verse only as malicious speech in an attempt to incite Saul, King Saul, to be jealous of David, young David. And by the way, I highly recommend, I think I mentioned it before, this show, House of David, that's on Amazon Prime. It's terrific. Again, it's made by Christians, so we would disagree with some of the storytelling liberties that were taken, and they're quite frank that they take some storytelling liberties. But overall, incredibly high-quality show, really well written. Brings David to life. Even David as a singer, they did a great job. He's like a good singer, and the way they wrote these, and he's singing psalms in Hebrew. And just the way that it's written and performed, like you can believe it. You can really believe that's David, the sweet singer of Israel, and his personality, and his father, Jesse, and Doeg the Edomite, and Saul, and his insanity, and his jealousy of David. I mean, all of this is really brought to life, and at a quality level, like, Lord of the Rings. There's a kind of tipping of the hat to the way Lord of the Rings was made. Really, really good show. Highly recommended. Okay, where am I? So Doeg the Edomite praised David in King Saul's presence, and eventually Saul, who really loves David because he's the only kind of medicine that Saul has in his emotional turmoil when he hears David singing and playing his harp, but eventually he turns on David, and famously, I mean, we have in the book of Samuel, Saul is trying to kill David repeatedly, and David does not kill Saul even when he has the opportunity, because he's a pious Yid, he's a pious Jew, and he's not going to kill a king of Israel. Okay, so Doeg was inciting Saul to be jealous of David. Quote, who knows how to play means that he knows how to ask complex and germane questions about Torah matters, not just that he plays the harp well. A fine warrior. This means he knows how to answer questions raised with regard to matters of Torah. A man of war means that he knows how to negotiate his way in the battle to understand the Torah. A comely man is one who displays understanding in facets of halacha and explains it well. And prudent in speech, davar, speech, means that he infers one matter, a davar, from another matter. Because thing and word and speech is all the same word, davar. And the Lord is with him means that the law is ruled in accordance with his opinion in every area of halacha. Right? So there's the surface meaning, the pshat, of these praises of David, but also, David was in his piety, and especially over time as he grew in wisdom, he was also a Torah scholar, a great Torah scholar. Now the Gemara relates, in addition to all these virtues listed in praise of David, Saul said to his servants, "My son Jonathan is his equal." Well, once Doeg said to Saul, "And the Lord is with him," meaning that the law is ruled in accordance with his opinion, with David's opinion in every area of halacha, a matter that did not apply even to Saul himself, then King Saul was offended, and he grew jealous of David. As with regard to Saul, it is written, "And wherever he turned, he put them to the worse." 1 Samuel 14:47. And with regard to David, it is written, "And wherever he turns, he does prosper." Although the verse about Saul is referring to his victories and his prominence in Torah, he was not privileged to have all of his conclusions accepted as halacha as David was. Now the Gemara asks, from where do we derive that it was Doeg who listed the virtues in this verse? It doesn't say that in the book of Samuel. So the Gemara answers that it is written here, and one, echad, and one of the servants answered, meaning the most notable, meyuchad, of the servants. And it is written there, and a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen that belonged to Saul. Now, next person, right? We said that Boaz blessed Ruth, that she would have 6 descendants who each have 6 blessings. Now that was David. Now we're going to talk about Moshiach. Moshiach was blessed with 6 virtues, as it is written, "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of fear of the Lord." Isaiah 11:2. And it is written, "And his delight, v'haricho, shall be the fear of the Lord, and he shall neither judge after the sight of his eyes, nor decide after the hearing of his ears." Strange praise. In Isaiah 11:3, calls for interpretation. So Rabbi Alexandri says that the term haricho teaches that God burdened Moshiach with mitzvahs and afflictions like millstones, rechaim. Rava says that haricho teaches that Moshiach will smell and then judge, demorach, and then judge on that basis, sensing who is right, as it is written, "And he shall neither judge after the sight, lemare, of his eyes, nor decide after the hearing of his ears. And with righteousness shall he judge the poor and decide equity for the meek of the earth." Now, justice is blind, right? Meaning that justice cannot be bribed or swayed from what is true. But you don't want a blind judge, literally blind, right? He has to be able to see what is before him and interrogate the witnesses and read their faces, etc. Certainly to hear them. So what is that we're saying here about Mashiach? What we're saying is Mashiach is going to be a prophet on the highest level, right? Who's going to be given from God just perfect insight and intuition, and he's going to perceive far more than could be perceived by a regular judge, just listening to the words and testimonies of the witnesses and the defendants. He's going to see the whole situation. He's going to be given such a sight by God. The Gemara relates Bar Kochba. Who was Bar Kochba? This is actually another name for Bar Kochba. Who was Bar Kochba? Okay, Bar Kochba, the Bar Kochba rebellion. We're talking about in the year 135, right? So the second temple was destroyed in the year 70 by the Romans. And they were, satisfied that they had inflicted a very heavy blow indeed on the Jewish people. They were already we did not have sovereignty over the land. It was a Roman territory. Then they destroyed the temple. Okay, so out of those ashes was born Torah Judaism, right? Prayer-based Judaism instead of sacrifice-based Judaism. Thanks in large part to the leadership of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who relocated the Sanhedrin from Jerusalem to Yavne. So 65 years later, Rabbi Akiva, who was present when the Second Temple was destroyed and was still alive, and probably the foremost sage of the Jewish people, and there was a rebellion against Rome led by this guy, Bar Kochba, who thought that he was the Messiah and that the time had come to throw off the yoke of Rome. And sadly, Rabbi Akiva actually made a mistake. He just made a mistake and thought this guy was Moshiach, or at least entertained the possibility, and this ended up being a disaster. They did not rise up and defeat Rome. Rather, Rome committed a genocide against the Jews. And this is the incident that we're now talking about. Okay? So Bar Kochba ruled for 2.5 years. And he said to the sages, I am Moshiach. And they said to him, well, with regard to Moshiach, it is written that he is able to smell and judge. So let us see ourselves whether he, Bar Kochba, is able to smell and judge. And once they saw that he was not able to smell and judge, he did not have this perfect, sort of x-ray vision and intuition, so they killed him. Now, who killed him, right? One view is that the sages themselves killed him because he was a false prophet. But the more accepted view is that he led this disastrous revolt against Rome, and the Romans killed him. 6 virtues were ascribed to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. As it is written in their regard, youths in whom was found no blemish, and well-favored and skillful in all wisdom, and discerning in knowledge, and perceptive in understanding, and who had strength in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Daniel 1:4. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, in whom was found no blemish? So Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina says, even a scratch like the wound that remains after bloodletting was not found in them. What is the meaning of the phrase, and who had strength in them to stand in the king's palace? What strength is needed to just be standing in the king's palace? So Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Chanina, says this teaches that they would force themselves to refrain from laughter and from conversation and from sleep, and would restrain themselves when they felt the urge to relieve themselves via their orifices, due to fear of the monarchy. The Gemara explores more of their attributes. The verse states, now among these were the descendants of Judah, right? So descendants of Judah, the tribe of Judah. This includes King David, who's a descendant of Judah. But also Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were all from the royal tribe of Judah. Rabbi Eliezer says they were all descendants of Judah. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani says, Daniel was a descendant of Judah, was of the descendants of Judah, but Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were descendants of other tribes. Isaiah prophesied to Chizkiah, and of your sons that shall issue from you, they shall be taken away, and they shall be officers, sarisim, in the palace of the king of Bavel. Isaiah 39:7. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of sarisim? Sarisim. So Rav says it means literally eunuchs, whom the Babylonians castrated to render them suitable for employment in all aspects of the king's service. And Rabbi Chanina says it means that idol worship was emasculated during their lifetime, as it became clear to all that it lacks substance, right? In that early Second Temple period, that's where we saw that the end of the Jewish longing for idolatry that was, tragically so strong during the early days of the children of Israel, even in the wilderness, but especially in the early days of living in the land of Israel. Just, there would be these, every few generations, there was some kind of a longing for idolatry that would bring the spiritual level down of the whole people until eventually it led to the destruction of the first temple. The Gemara asks, granted, according to the one who says that idol worship was emasculated during their lifetime, that is as it is written, and they have no hurt. Daniel 3:25, indicating that the bodies of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were intact, and they were not castrated as eunuchs. But according to the one who says that they were literally eunuchs, what is the meaning of the phrase, and they have no hurt? And the Gemara answers, it means they had no hurt from the fire of the furnace, not that their bodies were completely intact. And the Gemara asks, but isn't it already written, nor had the odor of fire passed over them? Daniel 3:27. There was no need to repeat that they were unaffected by the fire. And the Gemara answers, this means that there was neither hurt from the fire nor harm from the odor of the fire. It's a great note. Very often people who die in a fire, it's not that they're burned up, it's that they suffocate from the smoke. The Gemara asks, granted, according to the one who says that idol worship was emasculated during their lifetime, that is as it is written, for so says the Lord to the Sarisim who observe my Shabbatot and choose that, for so says the Lord to the Sarisim who observe my Shabbatot and choose what pleases me and keep my covenant. Isaiah 56:4. So this verse calls them Sarisim due to their miraculous deliverance from the furnace. But according to the one who says that they were literally eunuchs, would the verse speak in denigration of the righteous? Would the verse identify Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah by their blemish rather than by their names? And the Gemara answers, according to the one who says that they were literally eunuchs, both this, the physical imperfection, and that, the fact that idol worship was emasculated during their lifetime, were true concerning them. Both of these interpretations are true, according to this view. So the Gemara asks from another perspective, well, granted, according to the one who says that they were literally eunuchs, that is as it is written in the next verse, and to them I will give in my house and within my walls a memorial better than sons and daughters. I will give him an everlasting name that shall not be excised. Isaiah 56:5. But according to the one who says that idol worship was emasculated during their lifetime, what is the meaning of the phrase, better than sons and daughters? Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says it is consolation that concerning children that they already had and who died, that they would also be memorialized. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, an everlasting name that shall not be excised? And Rabbi Tanchum says that Bar Kochba taught in Sipori, this is referring to the book of Daniel, which is called by his name. Apropos books of the Bible, named for a prominent person, the Gemara asks, now with regard to all the matters of the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, said them and wrote most of them. And with regard to Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, what is the reason that a book was not called by his name? Over the course of many generations, extending many years after the Talmudic period, the book that is today named for Nehemiah was not a separate book and was included in the book of Ezra. That editing happened a little later. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba says the book was not named for Nehemiah because he took credit for himself and boasted about his good deeds. As it is stated, remember me, God, for good, which now is found in the book of Nehemiah at 1331. So the Gemara asks, is that a shortcoming? King David also said, remember me, Lord, when you show favor to your people. Visit me with your salvation. Psalm 106. So the Gemara answers, David was asking for compassion and formulated his words as a prayer. Nehemiah stated them as a fact and a demand. Rav Yosef says Nehemiah was punished. Nehemiah was punished because he spoke in denigration of his predecessors. As it is stated, but the former governors who were before me placed burdens upon the people and took from them for bread and wine beyond 40 shekels of silver. Even their servants ruled over the people. But I did not do so due to fear of God. Nehemiah 5:15. And he related these disparaging statements even about Daniel, who was greater than he was. And the Gemara asks, from where do we derive that Daniel was greater than he was? And the Gemara answers, it is derived from a verse, as it is written, and I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. And the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide. Daniel 10:7. So the Gemara asks, and the men who were with me and did not see the vision, and who were these men? Rabbi Yirmiyah, and some say Rabbi Chia bar Abba, says that is referring to Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, who were with him and did not see. So evidently Daniel was greater than these prophets, and all the more so was he greater than Nehemiah, who was never privileged to prophesy. So apropos Daniel, Haggai, and Zechariah, and Malachi, the Gemara notes, in certain respects, the latter three were greater than Daniel, and in other respects, Daniel was greater than them. They were greater than he, as they were prophets, and he was not a prophet. Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi were destined to transmit their visions of God to the Jewish people, but Daniel was not designated to share his visions with others, and he was greater than they, as he saw this vision, and they did not see this vision. Now we're 94a. The Gemara asks, and since they did not see the vision, what is the reason that they were frightened? And the Gemara answers, although they did not see the vision, their guardian angels saw it, and they were overcome with fear and fled. And Ravina said, conclude from it, in the case of this person who becomes frightened with no apparent cause, although he does not see what causes his fear, his guardian angel sees it. What is his remedy? Let him leap 4 cubits from his current location to distance himself from the perceived danger. Alternatively, let him recite Shema, which will afford him protection. And if he is standing in a place of filth where it is prohibited to recite verses from the Torah, let him say this: the goat of the slaughterhouse is fatter than I, and let the demon harm the goat instead. And that's where this little passage ends. Let's just pause on that for a second. It happens sometimes, I don't know if it's happened to you, it has happened to me, where all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, I am overcome with a fear. Not anxiety, not tension, oh, there's stuff in my life, that I haven't dealt with, or problems that are coming up, things with work or relationships, whatever. It's not that kind of fear. But like suddenly, unexplained, not attached to any, source of danger, I feel like I'm in great danger. So when that happens, according to this, it's real, right? And basically your guardian angel, this angel that's watching over you and that can see everything, is feeling that fear sort of on your behalf and communicates it to you, and it's a warning. Scram! Listen to that instinct that's telling you there's a danger here. Listen to it, right? Sometimes, that you can also call it like your instinct, your animal instinct can perceive a danger before your intellect can, or it's your guardian angel. But either way, if you suddenly have a premonition that you're in great danger, don't ignore it. Get out of there. If it's impossible to get out of there, start praying. And if it's impossible to start praying because you're in a place of filth, then say this: the goat of the what is it? The goat of the slaughterhouse is fatter than I. Right? Whatever the source of the danger is, take something else. Take something else. The goat of the slaughterhouse. Let's remember that. Okay. It's funny because I'm going to Harvard next week for this screening, and when I read this earlier, I was just brought right back. I was 20 years old, maybe 21, I was a senior at Harvard. I was in my room, top floor of C wing, or C entry at Adam's house, and I was just kind of lying in bed at night, and it was one of those nights where like there's a lot of light outside because the city lights are being reflected and kind of overcast, and I just like suddenly. Like this feeling came over me of terror, and it was not connected to anything, but I remember it so clearly. And like I hadn't read this at that time. I didn't get up and run. Maybe I prayed. I certainly wasn't a religious person then. But I never forgot it, and it was like it was some kind of a spirit. I don't know if it was a ghost of something that had happened in that room or nearby at some point. That college has a very long history. Who knows what happened? But the idea, it's not like somebody I walk around, believing in ghosts and stuff. But there are more things in heaven and earth, than reason and intellect can comprehend. And it's not, it's not a myth that when terrible things happen, they leave some kind of a spiritual vestige there. Maybe I somehow, I don't know, maybe I felt that. It's not like some danger came to me and attacked me, that night or the next day. I don't remember any incident that went with it, but I'll never forget how that feeling of terror just suddenly gripped me. Okay. Apropos Chizkiah, the Gemara cites that which is stated, that the government may be increased, lemarbe, and of peace there be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it through justice and through righteousness from now and forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts does perform this, Isaiah 9:6. So Rabbi Tanchum says that Bar Kochba taught in Tzipori, due to what reason is it that every letter mem in the middle of a word is open, and this mem of the word lemarbe in the book of Isaiah is closed? What are we talking about? So the Hebrew letter mem has two forms. Unless it's the last letter in a word, it has kind of a curved top and a slight opening in the bottom. When it's a final mem, a mem sofit, then a mem that occurs at the end of a word, which is very often a plural. When a male word in Hebrew gets a plural, it ends in im. So a mem at the end of a word is a closed letter, sort of like the letter O in English. It's closed, right? There is no opening. If it's not a final mem, it has an opening. But in the Masoretic text, for this verse in the book of Isaiah, there's a mem in the middle of the word in lemarbe, where they use the form of a final mem, even though it's occurring in the middle of the word. And this is unique in the Bible. So that's what the sages are now asking. Why is that? So says Rabbi Tanchum in the name of Bar Kochba, due to what reason is it that every letter mem in the middle of a word is open and this mem in lemarbe is closed? This is because the Holy One, blessed be He, sought to designate King Chizkiah as Moshiach, and to designate Sennacherib of Assyria, Sennacherib and Assyria, respectively, as Gog and Magog. All from the prophecy of Ezekiel with regard to the end of days, which we find in Ezekiel 38. And the confrontation between them would culminate in the final redemption. Right? So this is, Jewish eschatology, that when the end of days come, there's going to be the war of Gog and Magog. And this is why elsewhere in the Gemara, I don't even know where exactly it says it, but, one of the sages say, may Moshiach come soon and may I not live to see it. Speaking 2,000 years ago, because before Moshiach comes, there will be terrible, terrible things happening in the world in this war, this final war between Gog and Magog. I believe it was Lubavitcher Rebbe said, we already had that, right? That's what World War II was and the Holocaust. So now Moshiach can come and it doesn't have to be so terrible. Others say, no, that wasn't it. And forces are rising in the world now. That could perhaps be that final terrible, terrible war between Gog and Magog. But after that, or at the height of that, Moshiach will appear, and then the world will be utterly transformed. So is that what's going on here, right? So what he's saying here, what Bar Kochba was teaching, is that it almost happened, and it happened a long, long time ago, right? The time of Isaiah, so 2,500 years ago, that it almost happened, right? That Hezekiah, who was a very righteous king, God was very pleased with him and said, you know what? He's Moshiach. And these other big forces in the world, Assyria and Sennacherib, they can fight with each other. I'm confused by that. I thought Sennacherib was the king of Assyria. Maybe they meant Sennacherib and Nebuchadnezzar. Sometimes there's misprints here, but maybe I'm just misunderstanding or misremembering. At any rate, the point is, it could have already happened. There was terrible wars in the world, and such a righteous king of the Jews, a descendant of David. So maybe he could have been Moshiach. Obviously he wasn't. The world wasn't transformed. We're still living in the world. When Moshiach comes, we'll all know. It can't be that Moshiach comes and the world doesn't change. So what's happening? Why didn't it happen then? The attribute of justice, right? So God's attribute of justice, as opposed to his attribute of mercy. The attribute of justice said before the Holy One, blessed be he, master of the universe. And if with regard to David, king of Israel, who recited several songs and praises before you, you did not designate him as Moshiach, then with regard to Hezekiah, for whom you performed all these miracles, delivering him from Sennacherib and healing his illness, and he did not recite praise before you, will you designate him as Moshiach? It is for that reason that the mem was closed, because there was an opportunity for redemption, and it was thwarted. Immediately, the earth began and stated before him, before God, Master of the universe, I will recite song before you in place of that righteous person, Hezekiah, and designate him as the Mashiach. And the earth began and recited a song before God, as it is stated, from the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs, glory to the righteous. But I said, my secret is mine, woe unto me. The treacherous deal treacherously, the treacherous deal very treacherously. Isaiah 24:16. The angel appointed to oversee the world said before him, before God, Master of the universe, perform the will of this righteous person. A divine voice emerged and said, my secret is mine, my secret is mine. This matter will remain secret, as I am not yet bringing the redemption. The prophet said, woe unto me, woe unto me. Until when will the exile continue? A divine voice emerged and said, the treacherous deal treacherously. The treacherous deal very treacherously. And that's Isaiah 24:16. And Rava, and some say Rabbi Yitzchak says, until looters and looters of looters come, Mashiach will not come. What are the looters and the looters of looters? Here's a note from Rav Steinsaltz. This means that looters, right? Looters, like in a riot, who go looting. This means that looters will come and loot the property of the Jewish people. And then other looters will come and loot from both the first looters and from the Jewish people again. That's according to Aruch. And the Ramah explains slightly differently that looters will come and then other looters will come and take what remained after the initial looting. It'll be very tough for the Jewish people before the end comes. Or, according to the Rebbe, we've already experienced that terrible ordeal with the Holocaust. On a similar note, Isaiah said, the burden of Duma. One calls to me out of Seir, watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night? And the watchman said, the morning comes and also the night. If you will inquire, inquire. Return, come. Isaiah 21:11 through 12. obviously when we're talking about prophecies about the future, especially end of times, obviously we don't know how it's going to be, when it's going to be. So these passages are very cryptic and mystical. So Rabbi Yochanan says of these verses, that angel who was appointed over the spirits, here translating spirits for Seirim, his name is Duma. All the spirits assembled near Duma and said to him, watchman of the night, does God, guardian of Israel, say that the time for redemption has arrived? Right? The whole world is waiting for Moshiach. And the angel answered, the watchman said, the morning comes and also the night. If you will inquire. Return, come. What does this mean? The Holy One, blessed be He, said that the morning of redemption has come, as well as the night of exile. If you inquire and seek repentance, inquire and repent and return to God, and redemption will come. All right, this is very hopeful. It means, it's not just that we're all waiting and powerless. We can bring Moshiach sooner if we would all turn back to God, open up and cry out to God, pray to God, fulfill our obligations, whether we're Jews, who have to keep Shabbos among the many commandments. That's why we say that if all the Jews would just keep Shabbos, Mashiach would come. But also the rest of the world. There's B'nai Noach, children, everyone is a descendant of Noach. And if everybody would fulfill the commandments, the 7 mitzvahs of the descendants of Noach, which include knowing about God, learning about God, having a relationship with God. It was taught in the name of Rabbi and I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. It was taught in the name of Rabbi Papeas. It is a disgrace for Chizkiah and his associates that they did not recite a song themselves, and that a song was not recited until the earth began and recited a song. As it is stated, from the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs, glory to the righteous, Isaiah 24:16. On a similar note, you say, and Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, said, blessed be the Lord who has delivered you out of the hand of Egypt and out of the hand of Pharaoh, Exodus 18:10. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Papeas, it is a disgrace for Moses and the 600,000 adult men of the children of Israel whom he led out of Egypt, that they did not say blessed until Yitro came and said, blessed be the Lord. And it is written in the previous verse, Vayichad Yitro, for all the goodness that the Lord had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the land of Egypt, Exodus 18:9. And Rav and Shmuel disagreed with regard to the meaning of the word Vayichad. Rav says he passed a sharp, chad, sword over his flesh, i.e. he circumcised himself and he converted to Judaism. And Shmuel says he felt as though cuts, hidudim, were made over his flesh, i.e. he had an unpleasant feeling due to the downfall of Egypt. Why would Yisro have an unpleasant feeling due to the fall of Egypt? Rav says with regard to this statement of Shmuel that this is in accordance with the adage that people say with regard to a convert. For 10 generations after his conversion, one should not disparage a Gentile before him and his descendants, as they continue to identify somewhat with Gentiles and they remain sensitive to their pain. That's what I've got for us today. Let's take a few questions. Sharon, I understood that Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah were not considered prophets. That's what it said about Daniel, for sure. Hananiah, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, they were just very righteous, right? They had tremendous merit. But did we say that they were prophets? Well, that was the back and forth, right? It seems that Nebuchadnezzar thought they were prophets because they were saved from the fire. Doesn't mean that they were. Michelle says, while studying Isaiah with friends today, I was introduced to Zephaniah. I am 68 years on the planet and didn't know Zephaniah. Came home and read the whole book. Such a delight to find something new. Amen. And the learning, thank God, never ends. I was reading with today, Pirkei Avos, I believe it's 2:9 or 2:10. Where Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, that we mentioned earlier today, was saying, if you have learned much Torah, do not think very much of yourself, for this is what you were born to do. And the Maharal comments on this that there are three kinds of urges in the human. The urge to eat, the urge to procreate, and the urge to grow in wisdom. The first two can be satisfied, at least temporarily, but the urge to grow spiritually, to grow in wisdom, can never be satisfied. It should never be satisfied. And there's no person who's ever lived, who couldn't learn more and couldn't stand to learn a lot more. And thank God we have that urge to learn more and to grow and to perfect ourselves, because that is what the human was created to do. Very good, Michelle. And finally, Bill, we've encountered this situation before where one of God's attributes, particularly God's attribute of justice, becomes a part of the dramatis personae of the story and speaks to God, so to speak. I don't have a question about that. I just find it strangely fascinating and compelling, as if this was the only way that we finite beings can comprehend the thought process of the infinite one. Right. It's definitely kind of, we're anthropomorphizing it. And elsewhere in the Gemara it says, right, that I think it was this Joshua, the high priest. It was a high priest, or maybe it was somebody else. Yochanan, the high priest, was granted, a visit and an audience with God. And then and he was asked, does God pray? He says, yes, God prays. Whoa, what does God pray? And God prays that his attribute of compassion will win out over his attribute of justice. And thank God that is the case. God is very merciful because God knows everything that we do. And, we lose the plot and sin and transgress and err and, just go wrong so many different ways. But God remains patient with us and showers us with compassion. And we should learn from that and emulate that as we emulate the ways of God. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, see you tomorrow, Wednesday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great night.